Blog Talk Radio.
We're live.
Live. Outside the box. Aren't you excited, Jerry?
Paratopia.
I'm excited that we have actually three, if you count the very original song we used to do, three of our own theme songs. What other podcast has three theme songs?
Not many, I can tell you that.
Hello to Jeff. I am very excited to be here with you, my friend, with you.
Are you? Well, you don't get out much, do you?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it is great to be here. So how goes it? What's going on? What's new? Well, I hear you're switching off right now.
Well, most of those are guests.
Right.
What is it with all the guest contingent?
Yeah,
are these fappers?
Yeah, can I just go down the list here? Guest 8337, guest 8500, guest 8534, and guest 8574. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Not to point you out unduly or anything. It's nice to have you here.
Well, we'll find a reason to get mad at anything. I mean, that's really what that boils down to.
Right.
We're petty men. So the Jeff, you were not around this week, and you will not be around quite a bit for most of the summer. Why do you get the summer off and I don't?
I don't know. I have goals. I guess.
There's that.
Well, it's. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's a multitude. Yeah, it's a multitude of reasons. Number one is the guitar building thing is kind of going into a little bit of a higher gear now, and so that's taking up an inordinate amount of time at present moment. I'm actually doing a bass guitar for Lee, our good buddy Lee, who's probably running late tonight. That's part of it, and then had a really interesting turnabout with my son's band in that he asked me to go play a rehearsal with him, and suddenly I'm in the band, and and so the other guitar player didn't care for that, and so he didn't come to that rehearsal, and then all of a sudden there became talk of getting rid of the other guitar player, and then the drummer folded the band. Folded the band with a gig on the books for about a month and a half away. And so now
Good job.
I didn't mean to, but and so now we have found another drummer who is a gentleman very close to my age, if not a little older than me, and he's a phenomenal drummer. He's got a great studio in his home, and so we are trudging on as we are. And so there's that, which I have to get prepared for, and then the other half of it is that I'm just fucking tired. I don't, and this is no fault of anyone's at all who's a listener or even just a casual listener, but and Jerry, you can no doubt relate to this, is that it when you do a show like this and when you kind of are in this to a large degree, it does kind of I don't know, it does kind of become a pervasive thought, and it takes a lot of just sidebar thinking all the time when you're not doing other stuff, and so I just need a break from thinking about it, and I've been on that fence for quite a while, quite a number of months now. And in true form, I think the night that I had, or the day that I had written you, that night, I came home and told Lisa that, I was probably going to step away for the summer and rejoin back in the fall. That, down the stairs comes my son, and we're sitting on the couch, and Lisa's sitting in the chair, and true to form, we start to see black and white fuzzy lights and or dark spots flitting around the ceiling in a routine fashion. And so I was just like, yeah, you're not going to pull me back in with that. You got to do something better. And so, I expect things will kind of flare up for a little while, and then probably will ebb away a little bit, I hope. But I'm actually more interested these days in talking about it. This does not mean that I'm not doing the show. Does not mean that I'm not going to be doing things. And so I think I'm going to become a lot more active in going out and doing field stuff for a little bit, just for the summer, and probably do quite a bit of work in Gettysburg, past the ghost stuff. Getting into that a little bit. So I'm lucky that I've got a spot that close to me that's that active. And so I want to start turning over some stones maybe that people haven't there and see what I can come up with. And so I'll probably have a lot to talk about come fall, Get
out of my house. How much clearer do I need to make this?
You're going to be encountering a lot of that.
Yeah, probably. And so, that's pretty much my game plan at this point. But, and Auburn says she wants to come to Gettysburg, and so you're welcome anytime you want to ride along, Auburn, because I'm going to be up there a good bit. And I'm also going to be going to the beach with my family a good bit this year, too. So that's the other thing. We're talking about going at least once every couple weeks. And so that's hard to do when you've got, other things pressing down on you. And that's it. So that's what I'm going to do. And so you kind of be on your own for a while, and probably have guest folks come in and whatnot to make up the difference. So that's really it. I'm burned out.
I've got a rooster crowing at me.
And there's your co-host right there.
I just watched a rooster chase another rooster out of the yard, and then he came over to the window and looked at me confused and gave me the Not unlike that.
Yeah.
You hear him?
Yeah, I do. He's answering me, isn't he?
Well, every day is summer for me, so I don't get summers off. I think that's how that works. And actually, Tiokason had emailed me and said, all I have to do is let him know in advance, and he can come co-host anytime. So
Great.
We won't miss you at all.
I know. Somebody in here, Agent Mike says, "What about going to Point Pleasant, West Virginia?" Not on your freaking life. No, I'm not a Mothman guy, and I'm not even going there. So I never have. That's something that I've had multiple people write me over the past couple of years asking to come on and do a Mothman show, and I always say no. So maybe Jeremy will want to do that while I'm gone. Because I won't.
No, not really. It's always going to be that one guy who wants to come on who just has nothing to offer.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you are.
So no. Well, Jeff, while we're on the topic of ufology, I wrote a little something today. It's one of those things that, will be controversial and probably nonsensical, and you'll probably say, no, this doesn't reflect reality at all. So why don't I read that now?
Okay.
Because, frankly, we have 2 hours, right? That's what the show is, 2 hours?
Oh, that's correct, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. I was just thinking about, just some of the eccentric non-experiencers who seem intelligent on a lot of levels, but then when it comes to this stuff, they say paranoid, delusional, dumb things that I know and that you know, and nothing more need be said. And this is what I got to thinking about. Ufology is a field of eccentrics. For the experiencer, the experiences themselves are beyond eccentric. They're flat out crazy. So the experiencer, him or herself, may or may not be eccentric or crazy. And basically I'm saying, if the experience is eccentric, the experiencer doesn't need to be. The role is fulfilled nicely there, right? And in fact, it takes a non-crazy person to sort of, with a sharp mind to inquire into themselves and to try to figure out what these weird experiences are that they're having. So I would say that on the whole, not completely 100%, but as a rule, experiencers, probably not that crazy. However, the non-experiencer who is attracted to the crazy topic, arguing to society for its reality, that person is liable to be batshit. Yes, even the well-intentioned. When the non-batshit outsider attempts to bring soundness and reason to the table, he learns right quick that this is not a field comprised of minds that can work in such an environment. He may still trust the experiencers, though, understanding that the inmates should run the asylum in this unique case. And then I wrote, even the eccentric experiencers tend to go through phases, emerging into some form of clarity or else descending into firm delusion. The eccentric non-experiencer, however, begins and ends with delusional thinking because the best case scenario for such a person is that they throw up their hands in frustration and become debunkers, or at least that guy at the end of the bar mumbling curse words into his glass. You think that's true, or do you think that's not true?
I think it's true.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, we've said this before in a roundabout way, that if you're not an experiencer of this, it's very hard for anybody to come in and actually talk about it unless you've lived it. And if you haven't lived it, then I think you're going to bring the trappings of, we can call it batshit, but we're going to put that in a better framework and say cultural bias and whatever particular pop culture reference that there is that seems to fit into that. That's what they're going to gravitate towards too. And
Give me a fucking answer.
That just makes it crazy. That's what it does. And I don't disagree with that. No. I think the people who come into this who have had no experience whatsoever, David Jacobs, I think, that speaks volumes for where we are. And it still confounds me to this day as to why those people end up being the ones who become the main vocal mouthpieces for the entire thing. That makes no sense to me at all. But on the outside, I guess people say, well, I want to talk to somebody who's not experiencing this and can approach it from kind of that, uncontaminated, unfettered middle ground, which we all know there is no such thing. So I don't disagree with that at all, no.
Now, can I say something that will probably get us in trouble?
No.
Oh. Not real trouble, not like trouble with the law.
Oh. Okay.
Just, more hated. Well, actually, more hate from me. Jeff has nothing to do with this. I had heard Mysterious Universe had Jacobs on, and this escaped me, apparently. But in March, I believe it was, they had Jacobs on, and they treated him like, a god. They treated him like none of this had ever happened. And we know that they know about all of the Emma Wood stuff, because they, I believe, had commented on at least Carol's article in Paratopia magazine.
Yeah.
So, now I struggle with this because on the one hand I want to say, I can't live everyone else's life. I can't be expected to, take up the mantle of ire and anger at people who are going to just ignore this stuff and go on like it never happened. But on the other hand, then I think, well, don't these people, especially guys who charge you $10 a month or whatever it is that they charge, shouldn't people like that give a shit about their audience and not be stooges to, nonsense, be purveyors of nonsense when they know flat out this is nonsense? I mean, shouldn't there be some sort of calling out of that? I don't know. I don't know where I stand on that, but I'm calling them out anyway. The Serious Universe, you fucked up.
I would think so. I mean, Piglet Shameful in the chat room says they didn't have him on the show, that they actually just talked about his book.
I'm sorry. Talked about his book.
Either way, if you're going to, it depends on how they talked about his book. So I didn't hear it, so I don't know what they had to say about it. It could have been negative stuff, but so I don't know. It's I would think that if they referenced it in a negative way, that would be fine by me. But if it's put out there as this is solid stuff and interesting reading, then I would have to take exception with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I fucked up. They didn't have him on the show, but apparently they did talk about his book like it was, worthy. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't either. Well, other than to say it's part and parcel for the way that this subject handles itself. It's not surprising to me. And that I mean, when you really stand back and look at the whole thing, which is something I'm fond of doing, and I was thinking about this today, is that here you have a guy who, for all the world, is telling us that hybrids are taking over and they're infiltrating society and all of these things. Not necessarily saying it's bad or it's evil, but we don't know, and so we should be really wary. And there's all of these extrapolated, quote unquote, facts or things we know about this culture that's supposedly implanting our females and breeding us out of society and all this sort of thing. And I sit back and I go, show me anything that says there's even hybrids around. I mean, there's not, for all the world, there's not a thing to say that that's what's going on. And yet here's this entire thing built upon nothing. And I look at that and I go, wow, this whole field, I mean, because like I've said before, part of the reason that all of that was so ill-received by some people is because they have built volumes on top of volumes of the abduction work that's been done, and that would then negate their work as well. And that's just how it works. That's how things go. And for so long, the two main proponents of this whole abduction research thing went unchallenged for the most part by its own field. And so now these things have been integrated. Now it's like typical to say, well, I don't remember what happened. Well, let's get you into some regression hypnotherapy. That's what we do. And so there's what happens. I mean, that's another case then that's going to be the thing or the top story, and it's based upon someone else's work, which is based upon, that's right, nothing. And I've tried several times now to get Christopher Bledsoe on the program, and he's just a tough guy to reach, but he was on an episode of UFOs Over Earth, which was, for all intent and purposes, a MUFON program, as James Carrion was the lead figure on that program. And here you have a guy who had some really him and his friends had a pretty uncanny sighting, and then he disappeared for quite some time and then showed back up and couldn't remember what happened, but he actually saw a being on the ground, which he consciously remembers. And Yeah, and there's that again. So yeah, I'm back. Is Jeremy back? Is Jeremy here?
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I thought I had lost contact.
No, it was me.
Oh, I was trying to call back in.
Yeah.
Yes, you're
So anyway, I know pretty much where I dropped off, which was, that they then brought this guy in for hypnotherapy, and he recalled, all sorts of connections to these beings that he saw, which were far-flung and all of that. And then we put him under hypnosis. Or then we put him under, a lie detector test, which I have a problem with lie detector machines anyway, but that's beside the point. So we've taken his testimony, we've put him under regression therapy, which we know changes memory or fabricates memory, and then we give him the lie detector test. So everybody see where I'm going with this? Is, lie detector comes first, right? No, hypnosis came first. And so there may have been a really good case that that may have come up in a negative way on a lie detector test, of which I have great dubious non-affinity for, but nonetheless, if there's anything to a lie detector test that is saying it's a true statement or a false statement, might the hypnotic regression stuff have affected that? And I would say yes. And yet we keep doing it. We keep going back and forth between this thing of it's useful or it's not useful, and people just don't want to look at the evidence. And this is a big part of the reason that I become so sick of this on routine occasion, is because you've got people out there who are crying that science never takes a second look at us, and whines because science won't get involved with this. And yet when science does get involved, the ufological community doesn't really have anything in their hands to hand somebody and go, look at this, here it is, look at this. And then if we think we've got something, we hand them that, and then when it comes back as nothing, then we claim it's a cover-up, or we claim that something wasn't done right. There's always going to be some kind of loophole where when we don't get the answer we want, we cry foul. And that's what this, and by we I don't mean us, but the community will cry foul, and those interested in the results will cry foul. And that's just that's the way things work. And when you've been calling for endless moons on end to let's try and approach it some different ways, and we've tried to do that, and I think to some degree we've had an effect. Unfortunately, I think that effect and that kind of tangent thinking or alternate thinking is not all that well received by ufological community folks. That's considered, how did one man put it, wild ass theories. So, I don't know. I mean, it's as long as we continue to listen to those people who purvey bullshit and we continue to promote it, it's like Tyler said, and I'll say it again and again and again and again. Everyone else determines the value of the evidence that's presented and the data that's being talked about. And if you continue to buy it and you continue to listen to it and go to lectures, you're supporting it, and you're part of the problem. And so that's
you look
the
at the
end of it for me.
Look at the number one paranormal show, even on Blog Talk Radio right now. I believe, when last I looked, was Tolek, right?
Uh-huh.
This Open Minds or Exopolitics or one of these shows.
Uh-huh.
They've got this interview with, a guy claiming to know way too much about way too many things.
Right.
And it's like, that's number one. That's what people want to hear.
Uh-huh.
It's just like, it just makes me skeevy. But, there was that, the Huffington Post even did an article on Mr. Abbassiago, the Lincoln Levin Mars-going time traveler, relatively recently, giving him some love. And here's a man who, I'll put him in the batshit column. And so do you, even for your own amusement, do you foster that? If you're the Huffington Post and you're doing a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Right. I mean, you should at least, I don't know, try to separate the sort of creepy charlatans from the need medication people, and then not go after the need medication people.
Yeah.
That's my feeling anyway.
Well, that's entertainment, and as one of our fellow podcasters told me on the phone one time, this is all about entertainment. There's no sense in getting worked up over it, because that's all anyone wants is to be entertained. And so, okay, if that's it, then so be it. But I don't have to listen to it, and I don't have to be a part of it at that point either. And I still maintain that a lot of the times I think to myself, why isn't it that I just don't fold up any kind of public soapbox and do stuff on my own, because I'm the one who wants to know anyway. So that that's another part of it. It's just and I don't. I mean, we can't point at every little corner of this field and say that that's how it works, because certainly there are some people who stand up for what's right and wrong. But by and large, people want what they want, and then ultimately they want a scary campfire story. I think that's always what it will come down to. They want to be amused, they want to be entertained, they want to be scared. And so it takes the place of a campfire story or a scary movie that they can actually interact in. And this kind of goes tandem with people wanting to interact with their religious beliefs, and why this is gravitated more towards a belief system rather than anything to do with poking and asking questions and getting answers, no matter what those answers or questions lead to. Taking that and saying, okay, I've done my homework. I've gone through every possible venue and channel here. Let's pursue this for a while and see where it leads us. And much like some people said when we went down this psychedelic route of looking at this, that that's a ridiculous angle to approach this from. And what about sightings? And what about this? And what about that? And well, it's not taken well. It's not taken well. And I think one of the comments I got in the mail was, we've got enough people telling us we're drunks and dope heads without actually engaging in dope to see things and to compare things as to a paranormal event. And well, I fucking disagree. So I think we both learned something out of that.
Well, yeah, and
we went there, and that's it.
This should segue nicely into this week's episode, but it won't, because first I want to see if this caller is actually a caller.
Okay.
Hello, caller. You're on the air. Are you a caller? Caller? Caller?
Yeah,
caller
I'm just
playing
listening.
with a medicine bottle? Hello?
Yeah, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll put you back on hold. I didn't put him back on hold. Are you still there? Okay, I'll put you on hold.
Just
listening. So this week's show, and I know you didn't get a chance to listen to it, Piglet Shameful came on, not so shameful this week, and said essentially she was diagnosed with narcolepsy, and that explains a good portion of her experiences throughout the years, but not all of them.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh. But not all of them. But enough of them that it's just like the psychedelic thing. It's an interesting thing. It's like, okay, how do we parse out now what's a hallucination, what's quote unquote real,
right?
And all of that. And certainly one thing that comes up is, well, you remember when she called into the live show and she said she had that sort of entity that she said, I don't believe you're real, or words to that effect, and it just dissolved.
Right.
Well, she believes that was a dream hallucination, essentially.
Okay.
Because of the way it dissolved. And when I think of that, I think, well, neck mouse, or I think the dream I had where there was like some sort of lion chasing me or something, and I woke up and the lion was like walking by my eye line and dissolved in thin air as it was like walking through my wall. And that sort of dematerialization that looks like sort of almost like the chemicals of dream sleep are dissolving. It's like easy to sort of tell that that's what that is in a way. I wonder if that's not something that we could definitely look at and go, okay, that's an indication of a hallucination. Do you think that's possible, or do you think that you've had experiences of that type of, well, for instance, the woman that you saw in your living room who seemed to blend into, as you dematerialized, blend into all parts of the environment?
Yeah.
Would you say that to me that sounds different, because the things that I saw dissolve didn't dissolve into all parts of the environment. They just sort of bleeded out, if that makes sense, bleeded
right
out of existence. Do you think there's a way to tell? I mean, do you think we could come up with a list? Because this is the thing that I think Hermitage came up with on the message board. Why don't we come up with a list, you know? And I just sort of furthered the idea and said, why don't we make like 2 threads, a list of things that are indications of real highly strange experience and things that you think might not be. Make that list, and then people can go through it and say yay or nay, and then we can like sort of figure out, we can sort of weed it down to maybe a guide by which to understand our selves or our experiences. Do you think that that's possible, or do you think that it will always be a confusing mess?
I think it's always going to be a confusing mess. I mean, I've said for a while that, for instance, seeing Lisa at the end of the table, or what looked like the back, facade of her at the table, I mean, I don't think it can be ignored. What I said when I described that is that I was in the chair, in and out of sleep, watching TV, and so my eyes were shut when Lisa first called, to me, or when I first heard a name called to me, and then when I said, "What?" and I sat up, I was awake and alert, but I think when you've still got that haze of sleep on you, I think I think it's possible to have a type of hallucination at that. I don't think that that's out of the realm to say that. Now, when I'm sitting in here playing guitar and I see Lisa duck her head in here and call my name and make eye contact with me, then that's something else. Nobody's hallucinating there. And all of the other, the bunch of stuff. I mean, I honestly can't say for sure. Here's a good hallmark for you. If you wake up and you're having an experience when you wake up and you hear something, and it lasts a very short time, and it fades away, and or you blink and it leaves, or you just simply lose sight of it, get up and look and see if there's not something there. If there's nothing there, then I could chalk that up to some kind of hypnopompic or hypnagogic hallucination. That's why I like stuff where it's like when I don't wake up, or when I'm awake and I'm not waking up into an experience. That means a lot more to me than, if I'm sitting on the couch asleep and all of a sudden I see or hear something as I come out of that. That's not going to hold as much water as if I'm out mowing grass and see something, So there's,
but here's the caveat with her narcolepsy. I mean, it's something that is before medication, she was just tired all of the time, and so it was something that would affect her even while she was awake. Oh,
okay. Well, she's tired all the time. I mean, there is a fatigue for a lack of sleep. I don't know that I personally, I mean, I have gone through bouts of extreme sleep deprivation before, and I know what those kind of hallucinations look like, and that becomes a kind of a superimposition of other things upon what you're already looking at. For instance, driving. Here's a good story for you, and maybe this will do something. I used to work for a sign company when I first got out of college, and one of our biggest clients was what was known as the America's Original Sports Bars. And that conglomerate of they owned the Original Sports Bar, they owned a thing called Little Ditties, they owned a place called Bobby Sox, and these were all kind of like musical-type bars and or themed bars. And we had to go down to Atlanta, Georgia, to to do an original sports bar, and I think I did all the graphics work, I did all the
people. Is anyone hearing me, by the way? Can't hear anyone. Good.
Are you hearing me now?
I'm hearing you now.
Okay. All right. Let's try that again.
All right.
And so we left Baltimore. We went to Atlanta, Georgia, and I got no sleep at all. Now, that's a pretty good drive for me. And when we got there, it was literally time to eat breakfast and then go to work. We had only 2 days to complete this job, and so I worked 2 days straight. I did not go back to the hotel. I did not catch any sleep because I had to get done, and I was the guy with the most work to do. I sent my crew of 4 back to the hotel to rest while I painted the bar, and all the while, no sleep. So I'm at 3 days. Then the end of the third day, I finished up. We packed up the truck and we left. And on the way home, well, it got interesting because as exhausted as I was, I did not want any of the guys driving the truck because they had been drinking. After the job was over, they got a case of beer, and there may have even been weed going on in this truck, of none of which did I partake of. That's right. And so we were almost home, and I'm not going to kid anyone. Was there points where I thought I fell asleep at the wheel? Yes. Was there a feeling of disconnection? Yes. I remember going down the road, and in looking at the road, this is how my brain worked. I'm looking at a road that is not blacktop, but is the highways of yesteryear, which were kind of a beigey color. And I'm looking at it, and I start to identify the dashes in the road that delineate the lanes as stitching. No lie. This is stitching. This is not paint on the road. This is stitching. And I remember there was a guy up in the front of the truck with me, and I was going about 50 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour thing. And I remember a tractor-trailer in the fast lane just blew by us. And these were my exact words. I said, man, he needs to be careful driving on that nylon because if he goes too fast on that and these threads rip, he's going to be screwed. And the man in the truck next to me said, what did you just say? Thank God I was less than about 3 minutes from my house. But looking at the road, having the roadway hypnosis, being exhausted, and literally hallucinating, not just in sight, but in mind, that essentially the road was a pair of women's stockings with the little seam going up the back, that's what we were actually riding on. And I, for all intent and purposes, believed that. And
roadway hypnosis, eh?
Yes.
Don't give Jacobs any ideas.
I saw things. Yeah, I know. Now I want you to get in the car and drive. So
what's your phone?
Right. So yeah, I can totally understand that kind of exhaustion. I can totally see where you would hear things and, for all intent and purposes, believe those things to be real. I can see that, but I've never experienced outright, I don't know how you'd put this, something that isn't the environment being there. In other words, I could see someone looking at a train under that kind of exhaustion and seeing something other than a train. But I can't say that I would see somebody actively hallucinate something that simply isn't there in any shape or form in the geometry of our vision. I would have a hard time with that. I couldn't get my head around that.
Well, I mean, one of the things that she talked about was when she was put on some medication, seeing what looked like almost a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, some sort of turtle-backed person going behind a house as she was driving, and then went to the doctor and didn't say, yeah, I saw Turtle Man, but she did say, I'm seeing shadows or outlines of people and stuff, and it sounds like the doctor's reaction was, oh, really? Well, when are you seeing this? Oh, all the time. Oh, well, we'll just take you off that medication and put you on a different thing. So to me, and I had asked her, do you think that did that look as every bit as real as any of the stuff that you think is reality? Like she'd mentioned the Bigfoot sighting with her dad, which clearly is not a sleep disorder. This is something they both saw driving down the road, and she said she had to admit that, yeah, it looked every bit as sort of 3D in the environment as any real anything, any sort of real event. So what do you do about something like that? Do you say, well, that Turtle Man, that's got to be something of another dimension that this medication we know nothing about brings you to, and we just call that a side effect and immediately shuffle your drugs when you admit to seeing that.
Right.
Or is it not real at all? I mean,
yeah.
What do you do with that? I don't know. I feel weird talking about it because in a way it's like you can talk yourself into accidentally saying there's no such thing as mental illness. It's all people tuning into other realities and whatever, and we just don't know that is true. Right.
We don't. So, no. It's. I don't think it's.
And the same thing. And not that. And I'm not saying she's mentally ill or anything like that. I mean, same thing with these types of medications that have these vast side effects that we don't know anything about. I find that interesting that the doctor wouldn't. That there's not going to be a report filed where they're going to have to study what these hallucinations are. It's just going to be like, oh, well, that's a side effect, these hallucinations, and we'll just switch them around until you find the right drug for you.
Yeah.
It's like almost Frankensteinian. It's like we're just toying with these things that we don't really know anything about because we know that in some combination in certain people, they give the correct effect that the doctor wants to give, But shouldn't they be a little more concerned with the totality of the thing? Hello? Keep talking for a minute. All right, Jeff, I'll keep talking for a minute. And furthermore, people, here is where I start singing. So yeah, I don't know. I thought it would have been nice to have her on that episode. But I don't know that that doctors even have an answer for that, or else they probably would have said it by now, But interestingly, Tyler emailed me and said he thought it was an excellent episode. So thanks, Tyler. All about empowering the experiencer. And I think we did that, Piglets, you and I, in this little episode. I think every little bit helps. And I'll be interested to see, I know Nodwid on the forum had subsequently written something that smacked of maybe a sleep disorder type thing. I wonder how many other people are going to now be willing to admit to them. If you can say you have a sleep disorder and you're still an experiencer, I guess maybe that's maybe important to some people personally, but I think it's more than that. It's important to the whole kit and caboodle, isn't it? It's important to be able to parse out one from the other, because certainly we can't trust skeptics to do this, can we? Jeremy, can we have a Ghost Horse live Q&A episode? Kung Fu Jesus asks. Maybe. I don't see why not, unless he doesn't want to. I suppose would be a reason not to. But I don't see why not. I mean, if he's ever got a free Sunday and he wants to come do this, that'd be great. I mean, I'll be interested to see him in the role of questioner, co-host. I think that'll be a fascinating, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but pairing. Kind of Gamey says, what's a disorder? Was it a disorder before we labeled it? Well, see, now here's where you get kind of wonky. Because here's the thing. Here's what we're talking about when we're talking anything human consciousness related. We're talking about fluidity, right? And we all know this. Western science wants to say that there are these rigid delineations between things, mental health, mental illness, and all of the variants in between. And then, of course, on top of that, psychotropic hallucinations and whatever the hell alien abductions are and all of this. We want to say that there are all these hard and fast rules, but we here at Paratopia are smarter than that, right? We know that there is a fluidity, and so that does, as we've been talking around here, it makes it kind of impossible to even do a list of like, well, here's the possibilities. This is a hallucination. This is a real experience. Here are your indicators. Because it really is a gray area. But on the other hand, the reason that Western science can make categories that, while not complete rules, are dams in the fluidity. How about that? Let's put it that way. Is because these things do exist. So, mental illness does exist. These things do exist, and we can't just deny them because it's fluid or because we don't like the way they sound, and that's kind of what that sounds like to me, but I don't know. Jeff, are you back?
I am, yes.
All right, very good.
I fell asleep.
Feeling better, old friend?
Yeah, I've had really bad sinus problems all weekend, and so I had to rinse my sinuses.
Well, what's funny? I work at this health food store, and they have this, I don't know what it is. It's like a nasal thing. I should take a picture of the box, because the box cover, there's a kid's version, and then there's a family version or whatever. And in both versions, it's fucking disgusting. It's these people have this thing shoved up one nostril and water flying out the other nostril, and they're all smiling.
That would be a neti pot, my friend, and that is God's gift to bad sinuses. I will say that.
Oh, so you're one of those smiling people.
That's what I just did, yes. Yes. I'm telling you, if you got sinus problems...
I would never buy that to try it out. It's too creepy.
Yeah. And Agent Micah would be glad to know that I use distilled sterile water. I do not use stuff out of the tap, which can result in brain-eating amoebas. So yes, but I use a neti pot all the time, and when I'm not using that, I use Neilmed saline nasal spray, which comes in a large bottle that will blast through you. So, Jared, when you see those people with water running out their nose, try it when it's coming out like a pinched garden hose.
Blech.
Even better. It works.
Well, anyway. I think I have something for that. Wait for it.
That's right.
There it is.
Next step, goldfish in your nose.
So anyway, I just finished off my 2-minute rant. Should we move on to another topic? Oh, wait. You're not connected again, or I'm not. Can people hear me? Hello? Can people hear me? Should I sing again? Nobody can hear me. Strange. Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Well, Jeff just left again. So, needless to say, when he comes back, he's going to be super pissed because his whatever is going on, his Skype keeps shutting down. I don't know. Someone said that they might call into the show this evening to talk about their near-death experiences. So if you're out there and you're listening, please do. If not, I'm just going to talk about you behind your back.
I'm back.
Oh, very good. I was just telling the audience, and by proxy you, because, you weren't here, that someone who had written to me on my jayvay.com website, that's jayvay.com website, was sort of trying to ask questions. I almost said take me to task, but I don't know that he really was, but asking questions about the, oneness speak, as people are prone to do, Ask me questions that they think sound rational, and therefore I should have to answer them, which makes sense on the surface. But I had said, hey, why don't you call into the show, or actually, why don't we do an episode with you? Because basically what he said was he had what he considers to be near-death experiences, or an near-death experience, and it doesn't smack of what I talk about, and so what's the discrepancy between the two? The caveat here, as I found out in later posts, is that it wasn't a near-death experience the way we think it is. It was during a dream that he swears was more lucid than a lucid dream, and therefore not a dream. But that's a lot for me to swallow. So I would need to talk to this man first, but I was kind of hoping that he would call in. So if he wants to call in, that'd be great. Otherwise, I would kind of like to address some of the issues that he raised. Sure. But anytime I do that, it sounds like people, even if I say, look, I'm not being passive-aggressive, I'm not picking on anyone, I just think that it's interesting and I want to address these questions and not have to type them out. I'd rather speak them out. Right. Inevitably, the person says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you.
Yeah.
It's like, didn't offend me. I'm just talking about it on the air. Why can't that just be the case? So in lieu of him, I just want to say this about the spiritual stuff. If you'll bear with me one moment, Jeff. Will you bear with me one moment?
Sure.
Okay. It's just this, that a lot of what he was saying, in fact, all of what he was saying, it seemed, in order for me to answer, and I said this to him, in order for me to answer you, I have to recontextualize everything you're saying, which isn't going to sound good. Because when you do that, nobody wants that, right? They want answers, and it sounds like you're skirting the answer by doing it. But here's what I'm talking about. All of his questions were about, Jer, I've read what you've had to say about the spiritual stuff. I've listened to you on podcasts. I read your book. Here's what I expected to read in your book and didn't find. And here's what I think you're saying. Sorry if I'm putting words into your mouth, but basically you're saying this. And then, so he's writing things that I actually didn't say and asking me to answer things that I didn't say, and then asking, me to answer for things that he wanted me to write in my book and I didn't. And to me, that is a conversation that you're having with yourself. I'm not in that conversation, and so I don't need to answer those questions. And that's my recontextualization, if that makes sense. It's like you're talking to yourself, but I happen to be the focal point of that. Because how can I answer something I didn't say or answer for something that I didn't write for good reason, So I don't know, just be aware of that when you're asking questions. Be aware of the place that they're coming from, because I think reading is a lot like listening when it comes to this spiritual stuff, in that there is a right way to do it and a wrong way. And I think it takes just as much skill to read properly as it does to listen properly, meaning that you can't have a defense mechanism, because the way that we normally read and normally listen is to compare what we're hearing or reading against what we think we know. And so you've already got this sense of the world, right, in your head that you are defending. And so you're comparing what the other person is saying against this. And that works in a lot of cases, and it's a great survival mechanism, but it doesn't work for this stuff. You know, it doesn't work on this sort of fundamental level material. So you kind of have to do away with that. You kind of have to just sort of listen or read to what's actually being said. And in a way, this is a version of something that I think we've talked about on the show, and certainly one that Christian Murdy hit on over and over again, which is when you're meeting another person, are you meeting your own expectations, or are you actually seeing the person for what they are? And you can go as grand with that as talking about prejudice, or as small as talking about that person offended you on a previous day, and so you think you're still dealing with that person, and they could be completely different today, and so how will you know unless you drop the fact that you were offended and see them as they are today? You know, I think the same goes into reading books on spirituality and in listening to talks about it. And I think if we learn to do that properly, then you'll better be able to decipher A, what is being said, and B, if that registers as true, because I think that will be registering not against your defense mechanism, but against, you know, the essence of you, the thing deep down that intuits danger or no, that's good. So anyway, there's my rant number 2. Hello?
Hello. Hi.
Did you read a newspaper while I was...
I went to the bathroom again. Oh,
good. Excellent. So did all of the listeners, by the way. You're not alone. Oh, that was like the 7th inning stretch. You're welcome, everybody.
Yes, fascinating discussion, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you. Well, you say something, and I'll just beat off over here. Oh, yeah, that's good. Oh, what, Jeff? What?
Jared, turn your mic off. Turn your mic off, dude. May I just say I haven't heard the words beat off since I was in elementary school.
You're welcome.
So what else? What else is on the agenda tonight? Do we have an agenda? Is there an agenda of any kind?
We've been going through this agenda. I mean, I think we've been running down the list of I don't know, crap on our minds, right? The crap on our minds agenda. And then I was begging someone to call in, but that hasn't happened yet. So.
Okay.
So we got nothing. But if someone wants to call in, 323-580-5757. Don't make Jeff suffer another hour for nothing, you sons of bitches.
I see there's quite a talk on the chat board about ears and the sanitation of ears and ear itching and worms and spiders. So we've got quite an eclectic discussion going on in the Paratopia chat box tonight, and I'm in. I enjoy ear discussions, particularly those with itching.
Well, that's because of your fetish. We've talked about this. Live show.
Yeah, live show, that's right. Piglet Shameful, hi there, says, what if dolphins have out-of-body experiences and they are the alien entities that are visiting us?
Quiet. That's my answer to that.
Well, yeah, there's nowhere to go with that one.
Then they got a lot of splaining to do.
Right. But
well, actually, we know they're not, right? If we're gonna go by what Teokatsin says, remember when he said that there was that one tribe of Native American whalers who stopped whaling because the whales spoke to them and said, "Please stop whaling us. We're losing our plentitude," and so they stopped whaling. Well, one assumes that goes for dolphins too, so they would be able to tell the difference between an alien and an alien dolphin. So even if we can't, somebody out there can.
I mean, if you want a weird, I don't even know how weird it is. If you want a weird theory to ponder over, ponder the fact that, ponder the idea rather that UFOs and aliens are a product of Mother Earth trying to communicate with us by any means necessary, including, manifesting the air around. And I got to thinking about that the other day, and I thought to myself, does that mean that somewhere there is a? I'm not sure that it has to mean this. It just pondered past my head for a second. Does that mean that there is is there a source that is the Earth that thinks in a conscious way? Is there a place you could go to see that? Is it inside the Earth? Is it outside the Earth? Is it the whole Earth? Is it just the notion of the Earth existing at all, part of its consciousness being there? And so, when you have no mouth and you cannot scream, perhaps you make some kind of matter, or you formulate some kind of matter out of what you have. Maybe it's a natural process. Maybe this is, people all the time, you watch Ancient Aliens, which, by the way, great hair on that show, all the way around.
It doesn't begin and end at Tsoukalos?
No. Philip Coppens, a former guest of the Paratopia show, also fantastic hair. But I think one of the thoughts that come to mind in there, when you see that some structures on the Earth that are clearly man-made or made by hand are at least twice as old as what we think that they may have been. For instance, the Sphinx is been dated by some to be at least twice as old as what we previously thought it was. That not only might point to aliens, that might present a notion that we are not the first people who were on this planet, and that our own evolution came after another civilization was here and destroyed itself or left. And I think if that's the case, is what the Earth boils down to, what Mother Earth boils down to, is she a birthing station for populating the cosmos? We are of the Earth. We come from this place. She births us. We evolve on her. We take from her. So in effect, she is in all of us, fundamentally. And so from here is our next period of evolution, which is guided by her, by showing us and suggesting these things, suggesting science and the calculus and language and all of these different things, which, by the way, feeds into ayahuasca, into the psilocybin mushroom, into alien abduction, perhaps, and as all of that kind of coming forth as an evolutionary mechanism that in the end makes us leave here so that she can then regain her strength, swallow up what's left of our evidence of being here, which in the long stretch of time, in the long stretch of like an evolutionary scale, wouldn't take long for the Earth to take back everything that we have built on her. And then we go forth and we go out and we populate somewhere else and we continue. So that, this is the kind of shit that I think about while I'm laying in bed worrying about death every minute. Is this a birthing station? Is that the purpose of what she is that she gives rise to consciousness and birth, and then we leave, and then she does it again, and it just keeps doing it over and over and again. I find that kind of theory to be interesting, that's what this is all about. It's all about getting away from her. And I think we're reaching that point.
Do you really lie in bed and worry about death every minute?
When it's quiet. Yeah, I have that.
I do that sometimes.
Yeah,
I've already been there and I do it.
Yeah. I lay there and I have this little voice inside me says, I'm thinking about all of these things and for instance, the Mother Earth being a birthing station, and something inside of me goes, none of it matters anyway, because you're going to die one day. and then I go, oh my God, I don't even want to think about that, But yeah, I mean that crosses my mind in this kind of abstract thought that I often find myself in. And this is why I say that this this whole subject can make you robs you of a lot of time, because you do have to sit and ponder a lot to kind of really feel like you've done something, to feel like you've actually explored this and said, I really thought about this. I really put a lot of effort and time and pondering into this, and a lot of brain power. And to do that, I mean, let's be honest, you can't do that all the time while mowing the grass or painting or doing, whatever. So that's another thing that takes a lot of time. But I don't negate the notion that the UFO and the alien and the gnome and the fairy and all of these things are Mother Earth communicating with us in some way to kind of guide us in certain directions to ultimately leave her,
Piglet
because she has to.
On the episode, I thought had a pretty good bit of thinking on that, which is that, if it is all Mother Earth, or a good portion of it is Mother Earth, then maybe the reason that it's so weird and symbolic is that that's kind of how she speaks, and so
right.
She's trying to figure out our language at the same time we're trying to figure out her language. I think that's kind of neat. I don't know that I buy that she would have to figure out our language, since our language, since we came from her. You'd think that she transcends and includes our language, and so would understand us, but we wouldn't understand her necessarily. I don't know. But I guess this sort of in a roundabout way gets to an issue with this that I wanted to bring up with you, which is when we talk about this stuff in terms of it being Mother Earth or something that is, I don't know, seemingly not as terrifying as we make it out to be, let's put it that way, then why the terror, and why so many people who believe they're being abducted by aliens and feel that there is this malevolent other intelligence doing malevolent things? Why feel that at all? Why did you growing up? Why did I? I mean, does it just gloss over that question when we talk like this, to be like, yeah, that sounds better than what we've been thinking. Let's go there. Well, okay, but are we glossing over the very facts of what we experienced?
Yeah. Well, see, the fear thing is a really, I mean, that's something that we've not really done a whole show on. We talk about it a lot, but we've never really done a show on that. And perhaps, at some point we'll have to do that. And maybe we devote a live show to it one night. But I think a lot of people who haven't had the experience, and you explain the fear to them, I don't think that anybody really adequately describes why that fear happens. And it's more than it looks weird. It's more than that can't possibly be. It's more than what is it going to do to me? It's so much bigger than that. It is a breakdown of what you have been raised in your entire life to know can't be. So there's that whole breaking down of your paradigm just absolutely fucking shatters. That's a part of it. Part of it is that they look weird. Part of it is that you realize that the notion of your control, I mean, and the one thing I think most people have going through life is that at least I can control what I do. At least I know I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this, and I'm going this way with my life. I'm in control of my life. I have my free will. I know what I'm doing. And you realize in short order, in the presence of this thing, that you do not have full control of yourself. You are dominated. I'll say that flatly. You are dominated. You are holding nothing but number cards, and she's got pocket aces. You got nothing. Whatever the other is, it's not necessarily that it's there to harm you. If it were there to harm you, we'd all be dead. I don't think it's so much that. It's that what's coming next? Why am I not in control of what I'm doing? Why am I not in control of what I'm seeing? All of those things compound into a lack of control and a loss of that control, and also a loss of what is supposed to be and not be. We're raised all our lives that the monster under the bed isn't real. It isn't there. And I got news for you fucking people. For some people, it is there. And if you've got a child, for God's sake, if you've got a child that continuously comes to you and says weird things are going on, do some diligence of at least looking and listening instead of just chalking it up and telling them not to worry about it. That's a big thing. But if you, for instance, you talk to Tiokasin, they don't have a fear of this because they've always known it's there. It's part of their culture. It's part of what they know. If it would become part of what we know, then I think that would be a lot less fearful for some people, or the majority of people. But for me, at least what has been described to me, is that fear is the root emotion, that we exist in kind of a walking sleep, and that it takes fear to actually jolt us into paying attention. And because my focal directions exist in so many different ways, that I was thick, I was very hard to get through to, and so the fear had to be very intense in order to shake me out of that. Whether any of that has any truth or not, I really can't say, because I've never known anything else but fear of it up until recent years. But and I think part of it, I think it bears saying that part of it might be that, as Whitley said in one of his books, this is peak human experience. This is not to be trifled with. It is not to be disregarded and put aside and ignored. It won't be for a lot of people. It's not to be handled uncarefully. And I think the minute that you begin the minute that you begin to put some kind of label on it as, extraterrestrial visitors or evil aliens or those bastards, look what they did to me, or something like that, then one has to wonder what the magnetic field is that is playing around, if it is indeed from Mother Earth. What kind of effect is that having? Does it make the whole thing short circuit and go haywire? I think the great part about fear is that you will learn volumes about what you fear. And oops, I've got an email. You will learn volumes about what you fear and how you fear it, and then you'll learn more about yourself. And maybe that could be part of the reason that fear is even because some of it is inherently fearful. Some of it isn't, but you're scared of it anyway because you don't know what it is. And if it's outside of the box that you live in, then of course you're going to fear it. So that being the case, if Mother Earth is doing things with nature in order to manifest something that we see and then interacts with us in some kind of profound way, it's changing who we are. It's making us exercise these things. I mean, Whitley was on and he said a lot of these things are exercising the brain to think in different ways. And perhaps thinking in different ways is what it means to evolve further, to get our asses off this planet. And that's that could be the entire purpose. While we call her Mother Earth, yes, she birthed us, but she's also going to push us out of the nest, which I think, I'm going to be generous. Within the next couple of 100 years, I can't imagine the Earth in 500 years. If it looks like Blade Runner, well, so be it. It's not going to look like Star Trek, I can tell you that. Not without some kind of profound interaction from someone else. But I think that's what this is about at present time. And my present time changes. My present thought of this, changes, month to month. But this seems to make the most sense to me, and it also figures into anti-structure, and it figures into marginality, and it figures into all of these things as to the big question of why. Well, why means get the fuck out of here. I can't support you after so long. You're going to eat me up. And you either get off or I'm going to eat you. And I think that in a lot of cases when you're talking about how ufology has viewed this throughout the years, and people have brought up the notion of angels. And we have the famous running joke of, are they angels and all of that. Well, that was the thought. If that was the thought, then people said, well, if you were confronted with a being of such purity, then you would be afraid of it. You would be afraid. If everything that we know about the divinity of angels is true, then you would fear that. And that would be a natural response to that as well. So imagine if you're facing a consciousness that is the Earth, that is Mother Earth, then that too would be an incredibly pure and very tribal and very whatever we mean when we attach a label like tribal or naturist or any of these kind of labels that we in English language try to account for or set a tone to. Then that would be a fearful thing. It would scare you because it's so big. It is so big. And I think, ultimately, if that's what we're here for is to leave, then legions and scores of people will live and die on this planet to one day leave it. And when we look back in history of this planet and we look at things like the Sphinx and we look at things like some of these pyramids that they're starting to find in the oceans and stuff like that we're reading about here and there, if any of that is true, by the way. Forget about aliens. Forget about this was built with the help of aliens. What if this was built by a culture that was here before we were here, before our recorded history? And we look at the Iceman who was discovered so many years ago, and we look how old he is, and look how preserved he is because he was trapped in the ice. We're talking about before him. Scores of years, millennia before he was here, was this planet here? Science will tell you probably not, but who knows? Who knows? We can't really know this sort of thing. We weren't there to see it, which is why I laugh at the Big Bang and I laugh at how old the cosmos are, and I look at all this science being done, and I'm like, look, you know what? I don't care what your numbers say. That's your thing, and that's your convoluted way to try and explain the universe. The bottom line is we don't know, and the more we think we know, the less we figure out that we don't. Yeah, that we do know. We don't know anything. We've learned enough to scrape by. But what if? What if this other culture that was here before us that is seen in places like the Sphinx and all that, what if they were here and they left, and what was left behind was found because it lasted, one of the few artifacts that would have lasted, and the Egyptian culture was then based off of what they saw in this in this Sphinx, in this thing. I mean, we don't know, and this is all just thought exercise and thinking about that, but it's I think it's as good a theory and as good a notion as any. And somebody asked earlier in the chat room, I think it was Piglet, said, how would we go about investigating if this were the case? I haven't a freaking clue how you would how you would do that, because you'd lead yourself right back into ufology again. I don't necessarily think we're supposed to know.
And that's the end of the Jeff Show. The end. Can everyone hear me? Wah, wah. Well, here's the thing, Jeff, while you call back in. I believe that was actually the ending of my first book, which is essentially saying, I think, that the species has to wake up and understand itself, and then we birth off the planet and we move on to other planets that, and then we sort of act as myths and help them birth into the universe, and that it's all about creating a fully conscious universe, to the extent that can be done.
I'm back.
Did you hear any of that?
Just the last few words.
Oh, I was just saying that basically all that you just said was like, that was sort of the ending of the book, which is it's about us knowing ourselves and then birthing off of this world and being the quote-unquote alien abductors of another world and, being midwives to that world and birthing them off their planet and so on and so forth. And it sort of becomes this rising chorus of awakened beings or whatever, that was a possibility.
Yeah, that too. I mean,
here's something I was thinking today that's kind of doesn't bode well for us, which is I was thinking about trees and plants and grass and all that, and essentially stationary organisms, right? Isn't that what plant life is, basically stationary organisms? And so when you have a global sort of animal virus like humanity, what do you do as protection? What would your self-protection be? Well, your defense mechanism to stay alive should be the fact that we need you to breathe. We need you to survive. Therefore, we can't just chop everything down and get rid of you. But that's what we're doing anyway. And I look at that way, and I go, are we here outstaying our welcome? Like when you think about nature going haywire and getting rid of us and how horrible that is and all that, I mean, maybe it's a necessary evil at the point where you're destroying the very things that are life, that your life depends on, that are life, that mean life the way that we know it, oxygen, food. We just kill these things so that we can make more of us and build houses and roads and drive on them and live on them and all of that. And I guess this gets to another point that person who had, talked to me on the JBay site said, which is about enlightenment. Well, not everyone's going to get this, Like, how many people has your book affected? How many people are really going to wake up? And I think back to the Georgia Guidestones at that moment, and I go, no, you're right. Not many, if any.
Right.
And so is there something to be said for balance in population, Because one thing that I had mentioned on the show is that I would assume, and maybe wrongly, that Teokeson's answer to narcolepsy and to sleep disorders as the reason for paranormal events is that indigenous people don't have sleep disorders because they're in tune with their natural sleep cycles, and so they live by them. And the fact that they live by them and have these rich psychic lives and rich spiritual lives means that you can't just relegate it all to some sort of disorder. Cannot be done. And so if there is a natural time clock, is there also a natural balance that has to be the number of bodies that can exist on the earth? Are we so out of whack that that's, I don't know, it's a horrible thing to think about, but does there need to be a sort of an extinction? I mean, is that an inevitable consequence of all this?
Well, I mean, I think it's like the Pink Floyd song says, she'll take it all back one day, and could at any moment. And, something that's really been pissing me off lately, and something that God forbid if I should get involved in it, because you talk about an inordinate amount of time talking about paranormal. I would probably spend a more inordinate amount of time talking about this topic, which is this notion of nuclear power, and looking at what happened in Japan. I mean, the part that I really don't, and I've said this all my life, is that all of the problems that we face on this planet can be really whittled down into a really simple answer. And the answer is, if it doesn't work and it's not safe, then forget it. Nuclear power works, and it's efficient. The problem is that the waste that it produces will outlive you by scores of years. That if the Earth cracks underneath of one, you devastate an entire area where nothing can live. Forget about us for a minute. No fish, no animals, no trees, no nothing. And we're not talking about a few years. We're talking about in the neighborhood of 100 years or more. Not to mention that Michio Kaku, I just heard him this weekend say every man, woman, and child on this planet right now has a portion of that Japan reactor in their bodies right now. And if we can't wise up and figure out that nuclear power is a fucking losing proposition, then we don't need to be here. It is a fucking loser. This Earth is not stable enough in which to put a building like that on that houses that kind of noxious bullshit that we need for power. It doesn't need to happen. And the sooner that all of us stand up and say, shut these son of a bitches down and let's find something else. Or let's put all of this work into getting the hell out of here. Which I think is what it boils down to. We got to have more power, but yet we don't want to use coal because that pollutes them. We don't want to use motors, and we don't want to use gasoline and fossil fuels and all of this. Oh, okay, that's all well and good. Well, how about solar? How about the notion of the tides? How about the notion of the ocean and the water? We're just coming up with these now bullshit. I'll tell you what will be the mass extinction of man, and it won't be disease, and it won't be natural disaster. It'll be fucking greed is what will kill us above anything else. That is what will kill us, because everybody's thirst for more money, more power, more items, more things. All of this is what constitutes a notion like power plants and working against nature. Let's bastardize nature in order to make power. Let's do things that can really cause quite a bad reaction if we do it wrong, but let's do it anyway, because we could get so many kilowatt hours out of this and make so much more money and power so many more homes, to consume more media, to buy more things, to open more stores, etc., and so on it goes. It's absurd to me that no one could look at the ocean and see the power of undertow and see the power of the tides and not have said 50 years ago, we should put a generator on the floor where we get the most conductive motion of undertow. Wouldn't that be a great source of power? Because what? Guess what? It never stops. It started, it's been going since we were all born, and it will be here when we're all gone. That ocean will keep moving. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with solar power? What's wrong with wind power? All of these different things have been around for so long, and yet we're dicking around with fossil fuels and nuclear power. What is wrong with these fucking people? The Earth is probably saying, I've given you everything you need, and yet you continue to spit in my face. And if I was her, I'm shaking us off long ago.
What we do is we go, all of that stuff that you just said, that's an ideal. That's an ideal, Jeff. That's idealistic. The thing that is the actual answer, the correct thing to do in this case, that's the ideal. That's not the reality. And when you say that, that means that you're basically admitting that you are going to do the wrong thing because you feel like your neighbor is going to do the wrong thing, and therefore if you do the right thing, it won't matter because too many other people are going to do the wrong thing. And so on we go. I mean, eventually you just have to say, forget about the numbers of people that it takes to make a dent in the, the wrongness by doing the right thing, and just fucking do it yourself. And if it's that, it wouldn't be an ideal anymore. It would actually be the case. Why does it need to be that the tragedy happens for us to go, oops, and then correct it, but only correct it to the extent that we're comfortable again so that we can make that same mistake over and over and over?
Right.
I mean, why are we doing that?
Right. Because, again, it comes down to the way this world is set up. And, those in the position of authority will tell you, we have to rebuild this. We have to do whatever we have to do to get another power plant up and running again. We have to make up the difference. We have to do this and that. And people have to have money to live. I mean, money to me is, don't get me wrong, it's great to have it, and it makes your life more comfortable, but it's what you have to do in order to get it. And that in itself is a faulty, shitty system to begin with, and we all know that. I'm not saying anything so revolutionary that no one knows. But I think any excuse can be made for not using Alice had brought up in the chat room, hydropower is great until an earthquake destroys the dam, or an earthquake tears up your generators that exist at the edge of the ocean floor, or the edge of the continental shelf, or whatever. Yeah, but and that's a valid point. You're right. But guess what? If that happens, we don't wind up poisoning the fucking ocean for the next 100 years. We don't end up having mutant fish. We don't end up having mutant shrimp, which, by the way, is happening right now in the Gulf because of this fucking BP oil spill. Okay? People are eating the shrimp out of there because guess what? The mutation comes up on the legs. So they shuck the legs off, they shuck the shell out, and guess who eats it? Us. Guess what? People are now having brain disorders and problems with chemical imbalances, in addition to infections and all sorts of other things from eating their shrimp. That's right, all of us. There's nothing safe about seafood that's coming out of the Gulf right now, so don't fucking eat it. And fishermen, and here's where it all comes down to, fishermen hearing me say that would say, well, that's my living. Well, I'm sorry it's your living. You got fucked because somebody, wanted to dig for oil in the ocean floor, and now it's ruined your business. So talk to them. I mean, this is how it goes. I mean, this is what happens. People get out of work because the technology doesn't work, and it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, it can't happen. I mean, think about how many people now are displaced in Japan because of that single earthquake and tsunami that destroyed that power station. Not to mention, forget that it's poisoning the whole rest of the planet. I mean, just those people alone. Let's look at those people alone. There are people who are dying. People's lives have been cut in half because they will die because of radiation poisoning. They will die from this. This is a fact. It will never be right. It is a mess. It is far worse than what we were told. I mean, Chernobyl. Did we learn nothing there? Nothing, really? It just, to me, this is one of the biggest blights on human society, is this notion that we have to use nuclear power. I am amazed continuously that anyone would find this to be a viable source of energy. Yeah, I think we're past our expiration date. I think we're getting deathly close to it, and we need to get our head out of the sand and start realizing that we should be putting some effort into getting us out of here and going somewhere and exploring somewhere else, or even.
Well, what do you mean by that? Though? I mean, do you want to bring this with you? I mean, would you visit humans upon another planet?
Well,
that ain't good.
There's the other half.
I would, and then my other answer to that is, if it's true, if sort of what I think is sort of getting at is that maybe these visitors are us in some way, and he's got the Lakota history that says that there have been however many worlds we're up to now, 6, and well, if all of that is true, and we're as a species a lot older than we think we are, and the earlier societies technologically advanced in the way that we are technologically advanced, maybe they had a completely other definition of technologically advanced that is lost on this age, then maybe you don't need to even go to other planets through rocket fuel and all of that. Maybe you actually need to, scale back indigenous thinking to figure out how to walk between worlds or how to open up something and get there that way. I just don't think you bring us with it, out into space. It just, that to me gets to your fear of death. Well, God, we've got to survive. Well, what about us is important that needs to survive? The fucking weed or the flower? So let's figure out what the flower of us is and, boil it out into the universe. Let's not just, because we're afraid to die because of what we've done, go and visit upon other planets what we've done here. I just think that would be nothing but more death.
Well, one would like to think that if we reached a point where we trash this planet so concretely that we would have to leave it, one would think that we would take that lesson with us. But who knows? I don't have much faith in the man's ability to learn.
If we could take it with us, we wouldn't have to go in the first place.
Right?
We'd be doing it. Yeah,
but you know what? And I'm just going to out with this because this is something that we come to quite a lot. I would say great if we could figure out how to get there, as Teokason says, in that way. And like you talk about, bring the flower, not the weed. But I think the problem with that is that, as I said to you before, our society is just not conducive to that kind of direction. And how do we make it conducive to that kind of direction? How do we foster that kind of drive to get to that place? Because we've gone down a decidedly different path from a spiritual path. We've gone down the technological path, and I think that was a dead end. I think despite what Ray Kurzweil says, I think that's a fucking dead end. I think that ends with more problems than we currently already have. And so, how does one make some kind of spiritual transition into shedding off a body and going somewhere else and not dying or not having to die to achieve that? I don't know that the world is conducively set up to foster that kind of path unless you make it yourself. And if that's the case, then great.
Then you destroy the world. Before the world destroys you.
Well, yeah. I mean, who knows? But
that's the society I think you're making my case by accident, which is the technological path is the wrong path. So how do you bring the technological people? How do you let them live? Well, they've got to shed being technological people. Well, but they're not going to do that. So how do we? Well, the answer is you have to, or you die. That's the answer. You have to, or you die, because that's the thing that's killing you, is this mindset that says, overcome, and you're not going to overcome. You're not going to be able to fucking sit in your lazy boy and imagine that you can still breathe. That's just not going to happen eventually. Nor should it. I guess that's the point I'm making. I guess I'm being even more, deathy about it. I don't think that is worth preserving, because I think that's just going to constantly reproduce itself. And so how do you get around that? Well, think if you're the Lakota, you bide your time until we die off, and then you go, all right, you shrug and get back to work,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one, but I think I like to think that if we got to some certain point where we would have to get out of here as a species, that one would certainly take the lessons that we learned from here and apply that to wherever we end up going. But who knows? Who knows? Like I said, I don't have a great deal of faith in man's ability to learn. Just look at where we're at right now with war, and we haven't learned enough from war that it doesn't work. Then we're still at it. So there you are.
Well, because it's not about learning; it's about actually changing, right? I mean, can you learn and still keep this mind that swings on a pendulum back and forth? You know, even in politics, right to left to right to left. But I mean, we do that with everything in our lives, you know, and we're constantly doing cruel things and saying that it's a learning experience. But then we keep doing them, and then we keep making more people, and those people don't learn those lessons. And so then you've got this base population of idiocracy, and it gets thinner as you go up to the point, you know.
Yeah.
But so at the top, you know, the cream rises to the top, but they're in a cream. There's not a whole lot of top, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So who would survive that and learn from those lessons and go on? It would still be a small population.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be billions of people that go on, I don't think.
No. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is for that. I can speak to the now. Get rid of reactors that when they explode, kill everybody. There's a good one right there. Let's tackle that first before we go into transcendence and all of that, because part of that.
Well, but I think it's all of the same thing. Because look, you're saying get rid of transaction. Yeah, of course we want to do that. If you still get the mind in place, that's eventually going to birth the people that then do it again. They're eventually, it's the greed. It's just like you said. I think you nailed it. Greed is the issue here, and so if you have a species that still has greed in it, even if you teach it away, it's still going to be there and waiting, biding its time. It's going to be repressed, and it's going to surface again, and then here we go again. So how do you get the species to not have greed in its vocabulary anymore? I mean, does it take a giant tragedy? I don't know.
No, I think you're talking about this notion and looking at how the world is set up. And you know, just look at it from one person's perspective. You have a house, you have one child, and you have a wife and a dog. And you know, as a person who has those things, one must provide for their family, and so you go to work. And where would you go to work? Well, you go to work. Just say you go to work at Kmart. And you get a job as a cashier there. And so now you're working for a giant conglomerate that is Kmart. And Kmart is owned by, just say, I don't know who Kmart, by the way, let's say Xmart. You go to work for Supermarket X, and Supermarket X is owned by a larger conglomerate of companies that ultimately is owned by British Petroleum or some other huge entity that is trying to make billions of dollars a year and all this sort of thing. I mean, this is what I mean when I say the upper hierarchical structure of our society is what becomes the greedy bastard that has to own everything and owns everyone. All of you people who are working out there, myself included, what you don't realize is that you're owned. You go to work and you get a paycheck, and yes, you can quit, and yes, you can walk away, but guess what? When you walk away, they take your house. Your wife leaves you. Your children don't go to college. You become engrossed rather quickly in the rat race. Is that what they call it? It's the rat race. It's the way society operates. It is the way it has to be, or the way that it is. And ultimately, I think it's going to take some kind of something to change the perspective of what are we doing? What are we? Can you take care of your children and not spoil them with technological toys? Do you have to have that Xbox? Do you have to have this? Do you have to have that? You know, I mean, that just in the notion of material things, forget about essentials. But there is essentials. You have to eat. You have to have plumbing. You have to have light and heat and or air conditioning if it's hot. You know, those kind of things. And that takes work, and that work has to go to somewhere. Everything funnels up to the top. And until things stop funneling up to the top, people are going to continually have to preoccupy their waking hours with trying to stay alive. And interestingly enough, if you guys go to boingboing.net and scroll down, I think to Friday or Thursday of this week, you'll see a story where, and this is a fascinating story, a guy who said, you know what, fuck all that, I'm going to go live in a cave. I'm going to go live in a cave. That's it. I don't need any of this. And he's doing it. And he has been doing it for a while. Another story on there, a guy who bought a deserted island many, many years ago. And him and his business partner basically planted thousands of trees that are now quite old trees and full grown. And it is stunningly beautiful. He's off the grid. We need to stop. We need to start. You want to get to the place where Jeremy keeps talking about. I think that's the first thing someone has to do. Get the fuck off the grid. Get away from the 9 to 5, the going to work, the getting the paycheck, to going to the bank, to pay your bills, to raise your kids, to go to college. All of that seems like a worthwhile pursuit. This is what we've been taught all our lives. You need to go get a good job. You need to go get a good wife, and you need to be focused on your future. Well, that involves getting ahead. That means ultimately stomping on people below you. That means fuck artwork and fuck music, two things that I believe do enhance your spiritual notions or your growth as a person. Let's talk about that computer programming. Let's talk about making widgets, all of this kind of thing, that's it. It's just, and Kung Fu G just says, but how do your kids go to college when you're off the grid? And the answer is they don't. Because what are they going to college for? Guess what they're going to college for? To get ahead. That's what you're going for. You're going to get the better job. You're going to get the higher paycheck. And you're part of the system again. That's how it works. Our society is not set up for spiritual growth. And I think Jeremy is trying, I think he's been trying for years to try and really get this to the point where people can do and experience what he did. And he's super passionate about it. But the world ain't set up for it. For a lot of us, it's not set up for it. And unless you take the efforts to make it happen for you, and to get off the grid and to extract yourself from that society, then I don't think there's a lot of hope. I think it's just that endless cycle that you become engrossed in, and this is what life means. And for the longest time in my existence, I've said this is not what we're supposed to be doing. This is not the way we're supposed to be living. And I look at this green sheet of paper in my hand and I go, this means something. This means I can eat tomorrow. It should mean that, right? Does everybody agree with me, or am I talking out my ass here? That's not what that should mean. You shouldn't have to do something else to get this paper that you exchange in order to eat. It's just like, what's fundamentally wrong with that picture? I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds absurd, and it is absurd. But this is where we are. This is organization of a society. So, I don't know. I think that fundamentally society is flawed, and until that society corrects itself into some more meaningful pursuit rather than having more or gaining more, then it's not going to work. That's just me.
And so it is. But don't you think that the fact that, I mean, if we want to put a rosy color on this, after all of that, watch me try, don't you think that it's the fact that you're even having this conversation to your own personal growth, and don't you think the fact that people who are listening to it speaks to theirs, and so that we are in a transitional time in that way, where people are willing to hear even something anti-technological or something that is pro-back to basics? This is not a conversation we could have even had in 1990, I don't think.
I think too many people would have dumped the show. Yeah, I don't. I think it's. It's just one of those things where one day you wake up and you realize you're being duped, and yet there's nothing you can really do about it. I mean, to do anything about it means to uproot your entire life, and we're already poisoned into. The virus is already in full swing in our society, and until we find some kind of answer to that.
Jeff just went extinct. So to sum up, everybody, I'm Obi-Wan. I want you all to be Luke Skywalker. Jeff is Han Solo. He wants everyone to be Han Solo. Isn't that basically it? But I am going to go back to something that Teokason said on the last show that he was on, which is to take a look at the Green Movement and see that people aren't referring to Mother Earth, is to roll your eyes and go, okay, this whole 99% movement, this whole Green Movement, all this stuff, as good as it is, as worthwhile as it is on some level, speaks to the fact that the mind frame has not changed significantly enough that this will make a mark, and that it is once again on the pendulum, which means that big business can eventually encroach and swing it back, or that people's minds can change as they get older, as we know happens, and they can swing back, just like happened with the Civil Rights Movement, where it's not that the Civil Rights Movement was bad, obviously, it was completely necessary, but to say that something like that indicative of how far we've come evolutionarily, well, and then you get to Reagan 80s destruction of as much of that as possible, and here we are today talking about our possible extinction. Did it really matter? It doesn't matter, I submit to you, if you are swinging on the pendulum, and so what needs to survive ain't the person swinging on the pendulum, but the person beneath that, and the way you get to that is through understanding even this very conversation. I think just getting it. But Jeff, you'd said that I am hopeful to change people with my book or whatever, and that other person had written, well, how many people have you affected with your book? I mean, wouldn't it be great if a book could change anyone's life? It's not gonna. Yeah. I mean, really, I think the best I can hope for with a book like that is to keep that dialogue going in contemporary language that's been going throughout history. Right. Because I feel like that's what's been missing, is there hasn't been anyone to come along and put it into terms that we find readable. So right. If I can do that, great. Does that mean anyone's going to read it? Not really. Does it mean that the people who are going to read it are going to change? Not really, but there will be one or two, and is that enough? Well, let's hope so, because it seems to be that is the natural thing that is happening with us, is that one or two get it, and like we were talking about, the base of people don't. So if that is the natural way that this thing happens, then who am I to, who am I to disagree with it? Who am I to say, well, that's not good enough? Maybe it is. Maybe that presents some sort of 100th monkey tipping point or something. Yeah. I don't fucking know. Yeah. All I can do is do the best I can, and I think that's all anyone can do. But when you say that that's idealistic, and I don't mean you, obviously, says, well, that's idealistic, then the answer is you're not doing the best you can. You're putting it off for nothing. You're putting it off to keep going in this way, and I would agree that we can't keep going this way. So there's that. Anyway. Yeah. And I don't, by the way, just as a footnote to what I said, this doesn't mean anybody listening has to go in tomorrow and quit their job and move to some godforsaken location, or take some kind of violent action against the man, quote unquote. It just means think about that. Think about what you could do if, and again, doesn't this speak to the kind of world we live in? That to get off the grid, that to become a society or a family
that no longer depends on the Western mindset or the world mindset of greed and cash and have and have not, that you could be self-sustaining and live off the grid. In other words, do your own power that respects Mother Earth rather than poisons her and all of that. Isn't it a shame that to do any of that, you need money? You would have to win the fucking lottery or something to be able to afford to set your life up to live that way. Now, there's something fundamentally wrong with this world when that's the case. And so I guess, maybe the answer is maybe the answer is that you towards the end of your life when you're retired and you're in those golden years, maybe that's when you move to that deserted place and take your family with you and say, this is where I want you to stay. This is my dying wish. Maybe you have to force or guilt people into it. I don't know. And then maybe you go from there. I mean, maybe that's it. I don't know. But in the end, you'd probably be seen as a cult, and at some point or another, you'd have the ATF at your front door ready to shoot you. So there's that.
Huh. Funny enough, Kyokusin is trying to contact me now on Skype. I don't know what to do. Well, you can hang out for 5 minutes, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are no easy answers to any of this except let me just leave you with this little bit, which is I was talking to some people at a coffee shop today about the fact that flight safety rules, patting people down for whatever, weapons and whatnot at airports is just about placating people's fears, but it's not actually doing anything. We've all heard this, right? We've all thought this. It's just the way for the man to alleviate our fears, but it's not actually protecting us from terrorism.
Right.
We've all heard this. We've all had this discussion, right? And so my point to that is the reason we've all heard this and had this discussion is because we've all thought it. And I guarantee you that everyone in this chat room who's had this discussion with anyone had that person agree with them, not disagree with them. So I leave you with this notion. Everybody is in on that. So when we sit here and we talk about, these things as if, well, this can't possibly happen because not everyone's on the same page, don't you find more times than not that everyone is having that discussion and just saying that the person next to them isn't on the same page, but it seems as though everyone is on the same page on a whole bunch of stuff. So maybe this is one of those things where we can just, you just go out there and you talk about it with friends and family and see if they agree or disagree. Maybe it is just the thing that we all agree on, but suspect that we don't all agree on. And once we out that, what happens?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Paratopia, you're home for Paranormal Talk on Sunday nights.
And on that note...
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Appreciate you hanging with my bitch fest about society and its ills. I'm going to get up and go to jury duty tomorrow.
Oh, have fun. I'm going to go to a volcano tomorrow, so kind of the same thing.
Yeah. I often wonder what it would be like to have jury duty in Hawaii.
I don't even think you have to show up. I don't think we allow criminals here. I think that's the way that goes.
Dog would be poor.
That's right. Well, I will see everyone on Friday, and we'll be back here again on Sunday. Jim, thank you for hanging out.
You too. See you later.
Love you all.
Good night, everybody.
that extraterrestrial? You've got to think outside the box.